Hello, Aubrey. How's it going today? You ready to talk about travel?
Yes, I'm always ready to talk about travel. Lindsay,
Yes.
when did you last go on a trip that you would call a journey?
Oh man, probably one of my bigger treks.
Yeah.
Maybe when I went to Patagonia or the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which took me 6 weeks, and I hiked 500 miles across
That's
Spain.
definitely a journey. Those are really good examples. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. A little harder than the usual trip. What are we talking about today?
We got a great question today about let's just go ahead and read it. It's about a recent IELTS question, and then we're going to dive into the answer here.
Okay. Hello, Aubrey and Lindsay. Thank you for all your episodes and especially for the videos on YouTube. I have a question to ask you. I took IELTS a few days ago, and the question I was asked on part 2 was describe a memorable journey you have made. I wasn't sure if a fairly normal vacation could be considered a memorable journey. I talked about a trip to Spain. Do you think this works? I haven't received my scores. I'm worried I will get a low score on this part of the test. Would love to hear what you think, Eugenia. Okay.
Yeah, such a great question, but I can also really understand why Eugenia is concerned because it is different, right? A trip, a vacation is different from a journey. So that does potentially work depending on what you said about the trip. We're going to dive into the different sort of terms about trips, and we're also going to provide a Band 9 answer for this question. So be sure to stay to the end to hear that. We'll also provide some high scoring vocabulary that could be used on this question.
Yeah, and Eugenia called out our YouTube channel. So we do have a YouTube channel here on the show. Go over to IELTS Energy TV on YouTube and hit subscribe if you prefer to learn that way.
Yes.
You know, Aubrey, I wonder if some of this is also about British English versus Australian using the word journey. Because I've seen, like, when I book Lufthansa or any European airlines, it'll say like journey. It'll
for
say
just like a vacation
trip,
or a trip
instead of trip.
Okay,
In America,
interesting.
American Airlines will say like United, whatever. Southwest will often say trip, and the European Airlines will say journey. So I wonder if there's something there.
That's really interesting. And that's actually probably even better news for Eugenia because British vocabulary, the way things are said in other countries, also works on IELTS, right?
Yes.
So describing any normal trip likely would work as a journey.
Yeah,
Like you
I
just
totally
need to
think
share why it's memorable.
Exactly. That's the key. You need to highlight that it does answer the question because it was memorable.
Exactly.
It's just a memorable trip, right?
Yes, exactly. So let's share some specifics about some of these terms. As Lindsay said, journey can be more of a blanket term for any trip that someone's taking. It often, of course, it refers to traveling from one place to another. And then it sometimes does imply either a longer distance or a duration or that something was transformative.
Yeah.
And we also use this metaphorically to say like, I had a spiritual journey or I had a self-improvement journey.
Yeah. Exactly. And then trip, if we want to get into the technicalities, right, of the differences, if it really matters, it would usually be shorter, maybe a little more casual and very common in everyday speech.
Yeah. And then a vacation can be long, and also called a holiday in the UK or in some other countries, can be long or short. It's just time off from work or study for rest or leisure. Yeah. And so, if a trip to Spain lasted several days, that's a journey, right? It's more about it being memorable. And it's interesting, I mentioned that we also use this metaphorically for this question. If the question is describe a memorable journey you took, that wouldn't be this metaphorical, like if you talk about, I had a spiritual journey where I stayed home and meditated a lot. That really wouldn't suffice, right?
No, yeah, totally.
It's about that verb. If you take a journey, that means you go somewhere.
Good. Yeah, that's important. So it's like we have to interpret the answer relatively literally, but we do have some leeway here.
It's interesting.
I think Eugenia is not going to have anything to worry about here.
Yeah, definitely. And for those spiritual journeys, would say we go on a journey, not take a journey, like we take a trip or a vacation. Yeah.
Okay. So also, how you did on that question, Eugenia, would depend on the vocabulary that you implemented.
Exactly, right? So hopefully you use lots of amazing vocabulary, but we're going to share some great high scoring terms today. First is the phrasal verb embark on, which means to begin a trip or a journey. For example, I embarked on a 2-week trip along the coast, or a 2-week
Yeah.
road trip along the coast.
Or set off. It's a phrasal verb, but we still use it. It's common, or well, it's a little less common maybe for IELTS candidates. This is to start a journey. We set off before dawn to avoid traffic.
Yeah, it is a little less common. So it's therefore higher scoring, right? Most likely students would say, I went on a trip.
Yeah.
I went on a journey,
I
right?
left,
Just this go, I
right?
left on a trip. Yeah. So embark on and set off or set off on are both higher scoring.
Yes, or a once in a lifetime experience. A little bit of a cliche, but I think it would get you the higher points on IELTS still, right?
Yeah, definitely, right? It means extremely rare and unforgettable. So, for example, seeing the Northern Lights was truly a once in a lifetime experience. And you would want interesting intonation there. If you're talking about something being this fantastic once in a lifetime, you want to emphasize that.
Or left a lasting impression on me. So this shows us that the thing really impacted us in a certain way.
Yes. Right, exactly. So, for example, the kindness of the locals left a lasting impression on me.
And immerse myself in. We fully experience something. I immersed myself in the local culture. So this would be the key. I mean, the way you're going to be scored on that will depend a lot on what vocabulary you chose to use, right?
Exactly.
And there is still one more, Aubrey. What would that be that we can
Yeah.
share?
So, and as part of an actual trip you're taking somewhere, you might want to add that it was an emotional journey as well, right? So this is, we were talking about this briefly. It's the evolution of a person's feelings or mindset through, life experiences, travel, something that leads to personal growth.
Yeah. So for example, though I only visited one city, I learned a lot about myself. So it was definitely an emotional journey. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to provide you with a Band 9 Part 2 answer here. Lindsay, do you have a timer? Maybe your phone, you could time me for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Because as you guys have heard from us before, as you likely know, you must speak for 2 minutes on IELTS Speaking Part 2, which is especially confusing because the instructions say you have 1 to 2 minutes for this. And a lot of people would assume that means, okay, I can just speak for a minute, but your score goes down if you stop before 2 minutes. So don't stop, don't summarize, keep speaking until the examiner says thank you when they hit 2 minutes.
All right, here we go. I'm going to ask you the question and then I'll start the timer for 2. Describe a memorable journey you have made.
Oh, when I was 18, I embarked on an adventure backpacking in Europe. I bought a Eurail pass that covered 15 countries, and I saw them all. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to visit museums or enter historical sites because I didn't have the funds, but I still felt like I was able to fully immerse myself in the local culture just from being on the street, wandering shops and parks and chatting with people. So I would take a night train from one city to the next. I would just check the train schedule and see which leg of the trip was about 8 hours. And I would take that train and sleep to avoid having to pay for a hotel or a hostel because I just did not have a lot of money. So I would maybe be in Barcelona and I would, wake up in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I would go out and I would just spend the day there. I would talk to people as much as I could. I would always change a little bit of money so that I would have some coins. This was before the euro. So everyone had their own money, their own coins. And I was excited to have coins from every currency. And then I would just see what I could in a day. And then that night I would check the train schedule again and make sure I caught, before the last train went out, take another one. Maybe I'd go to Hungary the next time and I would just end up in a new place. And it was without a doubt an emotional journey as well, because I was on my own for the first time, meeting people from all over the world, and my preconceived notions about the world were being challenged and proven incorrect. And not only that, but I had a chance to truly experience independence. I was forced to rely on my own wits and resources. I wasn't even traveling with anyone else. I was just by myself. I would sometimes meet other teenagers at hostels or other locals and hang out with them for a while. If I could afford it, I'd stay at a hostel for a couple of nights, but for the most part,
Thank you.
it was just me.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. I like how you went into a little bit of a story there. You built the context around how you saved on hotels and how you moved from country to country by sleeping on the night train, right? So that helped us really get into the story, into the moment, and provided better vocabulary, I think, and intonation
Definitely.
as well.
Yeah. Better details and vocabulary, right? Tell a story whenever, and it's hard to fill 2 minutes without ever telling a story. Yeah.
Yes, you needed a little bit more detail there. Really nice job, Aubrey. You also used the phrase fully immerse yourself, right? You felt like you were able to fully immerse yourself in the local culture.
Yes. And then I embarked on at the very beginning. This is a good strategy is you have a minute to think of what you're going to say before you start your speaking part 2 answer. And you can jot down a couple of things you want to cover as far as details. You can also take the time to write down some of these phrases, and then you can glance at those notes to remind yourself. So I would write down immerse myself in, right? So that I could remember as I'm going, use these great vocab phrases.
Yes, good point. I love that we can do that. You also said it was without a doubt an emotional journey. And you didn't have to say that without a doubt, but that upped your vocab score for sure.
Yes.
Right?
And linking phrases boost your fluency and coherence score and your vocab score if they're higher scoring, less common. There were a few here. I said, when I was 18, I embarked, so a linking phrase there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to visit museums. And then it was without a doubt an emotional journey. Also, not only that, but all of these linking phrases that are moving, that are linking and connecting ideas, boost your fluency and coherence score as well.
Yeah, very nice answer. And so much more important what you've done with the linking phrases, the story, the vocab, more important than whether technically the examiner thinks it's a journey or a trip. I think it's irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. Especially where around the world, some people say journey to mean just like a short trip.
Yes.
You don't even, it doesn't have to be a 3-month journey of self-discovery. Any trip you could call a journey, but you do want to share lots of details. What did you do? And then any trip can be a memorable journey.
Yeah. So Eugenia, let us know how it went. We think you did fine, but we'd love to know and have a follow-up question from you in another episode.
That'd be awesome.
Any other final takeaway, Aubrey?
No, I think it's so important to be ready for any question, right? And then don't let it throw you off. I could imagine Eugenia hearing this question, and the whole minute that she has to prepare, she's trying to what constitutes a journey, and you're not having the time to think of interesting vocabulary and what you want to say. And I could see that really hurting someone's score if they lose confidence because of that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that now if someone gets this question, and I think that's just a good strategy to go in with confidence. You also could ask a clarifying question. Your score would not go down if you asked the examiner something like, is a journey the same as a trip? Especially where so many words like this are defined differently in different English-speaking countries. You absolutely could ask something like that. Or you could say, now a journey, would that be considered the same as a trip or a vacation? And the examiner could say, yes, right? You can ask clarifying questions to make sure you understand the question.
And maybe on the All Ears English podcast, All Ears English, if you guys are not following it, you should be, because maybe over there we will do an episode on the nuanced differences in American English between journey, trip, vacation versus what we've seen maybe in Europe, in maybe British English, for example.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Right?
We should try it. I'm going to try and survey some speakers in the UK or Australia and find out how they use those terms. That would be fun.
That would be really cool. So guys, open your search bar right now, type in All Ears English, and open it up and hit the follow button so you don't miss that episode. All right.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Talk soon, Aubrey. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.